Hi, everyone. Welcome to another transformative episode of Biohacking Beauty, brought to you by Young Goose, the world's first biohacking skincare, where we delve into the fascinating world of health optimization to unlock the secrets of youthful aging and radiant skin. I'm your host, Amitai Eshel, co-founder and CEO of Young Goose, and today we're venturing into the high-tech realm of hyperbaric oxygen therapy, or HBOT, to look how it can really supercharge our health journey and especially skin health journey. Joining us is a pioneer in the field of integrative medicine and hyperbaric medicine, Dr. Jason Saunders. Dr. Saunders is renowned for his holistic approach to health, combining cutting-edge therapies like HBOT with nutritional and detoxification programs to help his patients achieve optimal wellness. His work at the forefront of hyperbaric medicine has not only provided relief to those with chronic conditions, but also has opened up new pathways in the biohacking community for longevity and anti-aging, and especially and even skincare, even skin rejuvenation. In today's episode, we'll explore how these advanced therapies can be harnessed to really unlock or supercharge our way to beauty, delving into the science behind oxygen's healing power, the cellular benefits of red light therapy, and the anti-aging properties of methylene blue, and really how he has worked to combine those. Dr. Saunders will share his insights into the development of personalized wellness protocols that incorporate these therapies, offering a glimpse into the future of non-invasive beauty treatments. Whether you're a biohacking enthusiast, a professional in the wellness industry, or simply looking to preserve your youthfulness and enhance your skin's health, today's discussion promises to enlighten and inspire you. So sit back, relax, and let's uncover the secrets of biohacking beauty with Dr. Jason Saunders. All right, welcome, Dr. Jason Saunders. A great honor having you on the podcast.
I'm so happy to be here. You know, we met a few weeks back and talked about doing this one day, and I'm glad we're getting to it, and love to share some info with your audience.
Yeah, for sure. To be honest, we have met a few weeks ago, but I've listened to two of your, I wouldn't call them lectures, just public speaking. One was a real lecture. The other one was in Blue Heron in Las Vegas, where you were on a panel. So I kind of, knew you before you knew me a little bit. But but it's great having you on. And obviously, I super resonate with everything that you talk about. And I believe anyone listening would as well. So how about we start? Can you explain the fundamental principles of hyperbaric oxygen therapy and how it kind of aids in cellular regeneration, healing, anti-aging, things like that?
Sure. I think the easiest summary is just to say that even for you and I right now, or anyone listening for that matter, the reason that we absorb oxygen, even in the air that we're breathing, is because of pressure. So our atmosphere has a pressure associated with it, and that pressure is what's responsible for driving oxygen into our cells from our lungs once we pull it in, from the environment. The amount of pressure determines, to some extent, how much oxygen we can get in. So we all know that if we went to altitude, right? So I'm in, Miami right now, and so if I went to Colorado, that's, higher elevation than Miami. It's not sea level, it's a mile high. And so when we go up in elevation, it's harder to breathe, but it's not because there's less percentage of oxygen. Oxygen is 21% literally everywhere on planet Earth, but what we lose with elevation is pressure. And
would you say it's kind of, we're farther from the, center of the Earth type?
Yeah, exactly. We're further from the surface, right? Yeah. And so as you go up in elevation, we lose pressure. And all that really means from this standpoint is as you breathe in less number of molecules. And so there's less pressure driving that oxygen into your body. The exact opposite is true with hyperbaric. At hyperbaric, we're creating a temporary increase in pressure, so we can make the pressures even greater than what they are at sea level. And as a result of that increased pressure, we can drive a larger amount of oxygen into the cells, literally up to 20 times the amount of oxygen in a chamber session than what you and I are getting right now. And so there's a lot of benefits to that. All of our cells, except for our red blood cells, carry oxygen throughout our body, and they don't use oxygen, they just carry it. Every other cell in our body besides the red blood cells actually use that oxygen for whatever their job is. For your brain, to make synapse connections, for your intestines to absorb nutrients, for your skin to produce collagen, for your liver to detoxify your body. So, all of our cells are using oxygen for fuel as part of the fuel system. And as we drive increased levels of oxygen, we can drive improved performance, from all of these different cell types. And ultimately, we can use different oxygen percentages and different pressures depending on what effect we're trying to have. But that's really the basis for, how this thing works or why it seems to work.
Yeah, that's great. And it actually leads me to my next question. So how would, hyperbarics function differently, or the application of it be different if we were looking at, for example, like longevity, anti-aging, skin health, things like that, more like the kind of health and wellness type, rather than other conditions like autoimmune conditions or neurological conditions or, brain damage, things like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. What I would say is that in traditional hyperbarics, which is, for the last, maybe since basically the 70s, we've been using hyperbaric for like non-healing wounds and gangrene, certain infections and certain really severe conditions. And that's kind of how hyperbaric started in the medical field at all, right? And diving medicine with decompression sickness and illness. But it's important to know that, and even when we teach our courses and our certification courses, we go into the detail about that, because most of the research in hyperbaric is on those conditions. However, it's the same effect. So whatever happens to a human when they go into a pressurized environment, whether they have gangrene or a non-healing wound or some sort of burn, that same regenerative quality of hyperbaric is at play for that person who's sick versus maybe you and I who's going in for health and wellness. And really what it is that hyperbaric it's very anabolic. And so it stimulates growth factors, it stimulates repair factors, it stimulates collagen and fibroblasts for repaired skin and soft tissue. It mobilizes stem cells, both soft tissue stem cells, but also neurological stem cells. And so, we might use, like we said before, we might use different pressures or different frequencies. These are not as severe conditions, so we don't have to be as aggressive in the treatment. But what we're doing is we're extracting the mechanisms of action of hyperbaric, and we're just applying it, in one case, like you said, to certain conditions or diseases, but we're really looking for the same mechanisms. And those mechanisms are the repair factors, the regenerative factors. Even when it comes to cell repair, when we look at, let's say, when you look at aging, I'm sure a lot of you are in your audience, familiar with David Sinclair. And, he talks about the informational loss theory of aging, which is really saying that like the DNA and the epigenetics, they start to lose their ability to
access youthful information, basically.
Right. And so it requires enormous amounts of cellular energy for the epigenetic component to really, silence certain parts of the gene and express other parts of the gene. And so when you could upregulate cellular energy, which is one of the major things that hyperbaric does, as we accelerate the energy production process, we give the cells more energy to do those jobs. And so we see DNA repair, epigenetic repair, cell membrane repair, all kinds of, on the microscopic level. And then that transfers to, macroscopic changes that we see in you and I, that the ones that we're looking for the most part.
So just to actually ask you maybe a more detailed questions within that. So what you're referring to is the orderly function of DNA, basically, or epigenetics, which is, hiding the information that shouldn't be expressed, and vice versa. But does it work kind of in tandem with the repair of damaged DNA? Do we see both of those things where, for example, sirtuins are the enzymes that are responsible for correct epigenetic expression, whereas enzymes such as PARPs are responsible for repairing the damage caused to DNA from, for example, UV radiation or EMF, whatever that is. Do we see all of those, let's say 17 different enzymes being fueled by hyperbarics?
So I would say that across this is probably true for all the entire longevity field, but with regard to hyperbaric, we still have a lot of research to do to be able to answer that question with the level of detail that you would probably, or I would want. What we could say is we know for sure that hyperbaric stimulates sirtuin activity.
Yeah.
We know that hyperbaric stimulates BDNF, as an example, or platelet-derived growth factor, or insulin-like growth factor. So or VEGF, right, for repair of, your vasculature. Uh-huh. So we know that hyperbaric stimulates all these growth factors. We know that it mobilizes the stem cells. We know that it mobilizes or stimulates HIF1, hypoxic inducible factor, which is a cell signal for a lot of the adaptation.
And that happens when you actually get out of the chamber, right?
Correct, right. Yeah. So we get this increase in oxygen going into the chamber. We get this loss of oxygen when we come out. We used to only talk in hyperbarics about the time you spend in the chamber as being the treatment. And now I think most of us in the field would say, 75, maybe 80% of the benefit comes from going out of the chamber, the time you spend out of the chamber. So, the whole thought process has really shifted. So we know that it stimulates sirtuins, and we know sirtuins are going to be, molecules that are really attached to cell cycle, DNA repair, and we also know that when the DNA is replicating, there's an entire spell check process that the DNA go through to make sure that there are no errors, or if there are errors, there's ways to snip the errors out and put back in the right nucleotides in the right order. And we also know that those things take an enormous amount of ATP to accomplish that process. And so we know that hyperbaric drives cellular energy, which will give the fuel to the cells to do that. But like I was saying earlier, I think there's still a lot of research to do to really get the level of answer that you and I would really appreciate from that. But I'm quite sure we'll see very favorable results from that.
Yeah. It's a beautiful question. And there's a lot to it there, because a lot of the times when we are talking with people in the field of aesthetics, and I want to use the word aesthetics intentionally, because I would say youthful appearance, which is devoid of youthful function, or it is at least separated from divorced of youthful function, really end results driven type vocation, if you would. And we try to explain to them that there is a very finite limit to repair you want to stimulate and induce without any type of support mechanisms, plural. And I think one of the real emergence, I would say, in the last, you'll tell me how long, but at least the last decade for sure, but maybe shorter, in the usage of hyperbarics is actually for those very, I would say, forward-thinking plastic surgeons and, aesthetic dermatologists. Do you see more, I see it, but do you see more and more like adoption of hyperbarics into those field, what we call pre and post rejuvenation?
So we do, and it comes in a couple different ways. In some cases, let's say even in some of the certification courses that we're hosting, we're getting more and more of those docs into the course. So they're interested, they're wanting to learn more, understand, where it fits in this whole realm of healing.
Yeah.
But let's say on the clinical side, we may have a doc who sends us a patient, let's say post-surgical, because something, tissue starting to look a little necrotic. It's not healing the way they were hoping it would heal, or the patient was hoping. And very quickly, they're wanting to jump on that to stimulate a healing response. But what's interesting is if I can make a relationship with that doctor, which often we're able to, we start having conversation that sounds like, could you have predicted that patient maybe was one of those folks that may have not been like your ideal client from a healing standpoint, pre-diabetic, or they have metabolic issues, or
smoking,
the things that we know that are going to reduce oxygenation. They have, small vessel disease or small vessel damage, and so this healing is going to be hindered. And I'll often even invite them to send me a few of those people before surgery in the future. Because if I can treat those people 5 or 6 times before surgery, hyperoxygenate them, start rebuilding some of those blood vessels, start oxygenating some of that mild or moderately hypoxic tissue before the first incision, the healing post-surgical is incredible. And that just talks to the whole regenerative quality of hyperbaric, right? You could actually start healing the patient before their surgery. It changes the outcomes so dramatically.
Yeah. And it's funny that in aesthetics, it's not well adopted, because, for example, in athletics, any PT, any physical therapist is going to tell you that the stronger the muscle, the more functional the movement, whatever that is, pre-injury of, pre-ACL tear or whatever, you're going to get a better patient coming out of that surgery and healing much faster. It's funny that in aesthetics, it's almost like a practitioner, a surgeon, whoever that is, almost wants to play God a little bit. Like they want the patient or even themselves to feel like they can do it all. They can get like the worst patient and get the best outcome. But I think, I hope, and I think what we're going to see in the future are the excellent doctors are not the ones that have, the Midas touch, if you would, are actually the ones that have a very good protocol to prepare their canvas, if you would.
Yeah, I think that in looking at all the, we've been doing a lot of, we've been in practice almost 20 years. We've been doing hyperbaric for like almost 18 of those years now. And there's been a huge transition in the field with regard to who understands it, what amount they understand, and how it's being applied, and even for who it's being applied for, and then how to modify the protocols accordingly. But what I see in traditional medicine is what you're saying. I see a shift even on the traditional side of saying, there's still a lot of ego, I think, in medicine in general, but I've always looked at, the more we can combine, the best of a few different modalities or a few different industries working together for the sake of the patient, the outcomes will always be greater than they would with any of them alone. And I think I see that coming through now in traditional medicine, even though, again, sometimes the entry point is still waiting until it's not too late, but waiting until there's a problem before they sort of bring us into the fold.
Yeah.
But after we do 3 or 4 of those and we see, well, even in a bad situation, it worked out. So, if we can start sooner and start earlier, does it make sense that we might even avoid that? And I see the mindset shifting, I think, in the field for sure, which is great.
Incredible. So kind of piggybacking on your experience, but also the experience of kind of marrying different modalities together. I think it's what uniquely, I think, qualifies you to conduct those courses that bring on doctors or practitioners from many different fields and kind of creating a protocol that could work for everyone and also is modular. But as a person that is known for integrating these cutting edge treatments, can you discuss how combining red light therapy, methylene blue, and hyperbaric oxygen therapy for for the sake of enhancing health came about, which is something that I recently saw you collaborating with Dr. John Lawrence and Brian Richards, which fascinates me. So could you talk a little bit about how that came about and your kind of thought around it?
Yeah, I mean, the concept came about because Brian and John and I were finding ourselves like in the same rooms over and over again. And as we all talk about the different pieces that we each discuss, there's so much there's so much overlap. And so you start to think, well, it's not one or the other, right? It's not do this or do that. You know, it's both and. It's how do we combine some of these powerful tools to really get the best expression possible. And so the three of us kept brainstorming over and over about, you know, which pieces and when and how often and trying to develop, you know, different protocols around that. Because, you know, even it started from a mitochondrial conversation, right? We were looking at, well, if a lot of disease, right, most disease, or even for performance and wellness, like most of the issues that either someone already has or that nobody actually wants, it comes down to chronic inflammation and low or poor mitochondrial function, right? So if our cells are swimming in inflammation and they can't produce enough energy to do their job and clear out that garbage and heal and regenerate, all the bad things that nobody wants, the cancers, the heart diseases, the autoimmune, all that stuff, but plus accelerated aging over time, you know? So they all sort of fill that same, I would say they all have the same common denominators. Like that. And so we were really just looking at what are if you looked at mitochondrial function, and, you know, I did do a few videos on that. So for like the people in the audience that are like, I would love to know every step of the electron transport chain that's being affected by this, you know, I won't bore everybody with that, but I did do a handful of videos to explain it because, you know, the process of energy production in the cell, most of which happens in the mitochondria, it's like a factory. And if certain factory workers don't show up, or if certain raw materials aren't added, then we don't have the ingredients or the machinery to make the end product, which in this case happens to be energy. And so as we're really examining, you know, what are the more typical hangups in energy production for most people, oxygen happens to be one of the most common rate limiting steps. So oxygen is required in that. Red light stimulates, you know, one of those mobile carriers immensely. It's one of the only things that stimulates cytochrome C, which is part of that electron transport chain. But, you know, we know a lot of people that are fasting and doing ketosis, and, you know, they're on taking NAD or NAD precursors. And that's because the more energy density that you drive into this, the more raw material that you put into the factory, the more end product you should be able to make. And so those are all great strategies. I recommend them and we use them all the time. But methylene blue happens to actually address, you know, complex 1, complex 2, and complex 3 in the electron transport chain, which is a very unique molecule. Most molecules can only really affect one or the other of those, not all of those. And so methylene blue has this way to turn the redox reactions at the front side of that in a really unique way. Red light, you know, stimulating cytochrome C, and then oxygen being that final electron acceptor. Those three really come together to almost eliminate the majority of what I would consider to be the rate limiting steps to energy production. And so, you know, incorporating those, and they're all exceptionally safe. You know, you would have a really hard time hurting anybody with even moderately high levels of any one of those things. So they're very safe tools. They're very effective for mitochondrial function from that standpoint. And they're really addressing the main sticking points that would reduce energy production. So once you have energy production, it really doesn't matter if it was that somebody is sick and we're trying to improve their health. We need the energy to do that. Or somebody's moderately healthy, or they think that they're healthy, but they still live on planet Earth. They're still, you know, faced with all the stressors that you and I are faced with. They still have all the, you know, the time constraints, and they can't do everything perfectly all the time. So these three ingredients would also help drive those people into a much healthier, more regenerative, higher quality of life, phase in terms of their physiology too.
Yeah. Sometimes I think of methylene blue as like that side little cart on a motorcycle. You have a motorcycle and it used to have a little place for an extra passenger. Yep. As an electron donor. I think it's an amazing molecule that we'll see more of.
We'll see a lot of that, I think.
As time goes on, for sure.
By the way, sorry, that was the mitochondrial side. Just as a side note, all three of those things, those three ingredients, have a very specific effect on mitochondria, but they also have a very specific effect on the inflammation. And so, from an inflammatory standpoint, they're all going to play a big role. So that was the other thing was, if all these issues that we're avoiding, or if we have and we're trying to solve, if they're basically around inflammation and mitochondrial function, well, these three ingredients all affect the inflammatory side. These three ingredients all affect the regenerative mitochondrial side. And so for that way, it's a home run.
And I would even add something that I think all of maybe red light therapy is kind of in that field, but both methylene blue and hyperbarics aren't really talked about in the context of acne. And both of those, I mean, hyperbarics, it's a kind of a no-brainer since it is, oxygen is antibacterial, but methylene blue as well. I mean, this combination and red light therapy is kind of used within this context of improving skin clarity. But right. Are you seeing people even requesting to get treated for acne with hyperbarics?
With hyperbaric, we do use it that way. We do talk about it from the antimicrobial standpoint for sure. That's a big piece, but also the collagen synthesis. Yeah. And the skin turnover. So we do use it that way. We see that as like a side benefit in the office pretty regularly. But I haven't had many people who are like, oh, I'm coming in just like they're not connecting those dots yet, most people. So, but again, hopefully, more people will in the future.
Yeah. It's definitely not, I mean, there are a lot of treatments that don't correlate between like your mother or what your grandma is using for their skin care and, your acne problems. A lot of the times it doesn't even, it's not like you're going to go and buy products at Nordstrom with your grandma because your concerns are very different. But you could go to do hyperbaric sessions with your grandma because the correlation is actually pretty high. The Venn diagram is overlapping quite
a lot of overlap there.
Yeah. Exactly. So within that discussion of hyperbarics, what is very common right now as a discussion point is that comparison between soft shell and hard shell hyperbarics. Could you talk a little bit about what are the structural differences between them and what we see as far as, I would say, like wellness goals, but also clinical goals?
Sure. So, I mean, structurally, that's the easier answer.
Yeah.
Structurally,
you don't need 1,000 studies for that.
Right. They're made out of different materials, right? Hard chambers are just referred to that because their frame is either steel or acrylic typically, right? Okay. So it's a hard material. Soft chambers are literally, made out of different vinyl type of products. And so that's structurally, that's the difference. And because of the difference of material, soft chambers are limited to the amount of pressure that you're allowed to generate.
Yeah.
I guess they're both limited, but soft chambers are more limited. A soft chamber, I'll use atmosphere. We talk about hyperbaric in a lot of different ways, but I'll use atmospheres to just have this conversation. Right now in Miami, I'm at 1 atmosphere.
Yeah.
Because I have an atmosphere around me. I'm close to sea level, basically at sea level. So, right, that's considered 1 atmosphere. So soft chambers in the US can go up to 1.3 atmospheres, meaning about 30% higher than normal atmospheric pressure. Hard chambers can go up to, a typical clinical chamber is usually 3 atmospheres. So not 30%, but 3 times greater pressure than atmospheric pressure. And then a typical diving chamber can go 6 ATA, 6 atmospheres. So 6 times atmospheric pressure. And again, we're using a different tool for different things, right? A diving accident could be very severe. And if it happened at very, deep depths, you have to have a chamber that can go to a very deep depth in order to help them. Most clinical chambers, 2 to 2.5 atmospheres is pretty much the amount of depth required to help most conditions that we use it for medically. As far as how do we apply those and where does the soft chamber live in this whole continuum of care, you'll certainly get very different answers depending on who you ask that question to. But what I would say is twofold. One is, I believe that part of my job in applying hyperbarics is to understand that we have this continuum from 1.3 atmospheres to either 3 or 6 ATA, 6 atmospheres, depending on what equipment we're using. And we use this really high pressure for really severe cases. So in general, just in my other clinical background, I would say, here's a tool that we can use in a mild format, and here's a tool that we can use in a very intense format. And my job is to say, what are you coming in for? And I should try to match the intensity of my therapy with the severity of your issues or with whatever intensity of your goals happen to be. So to some extent, these less severe, more chronic or wellness-based cases are likely going to be treated or could be treated at a slower pace, at lower pressures, over longer periods of time, because it's not like aging stops, as an example. So if you're using hyperbaric as part of your aging process, I think it needs to be an ongoing component, not like I did it 10 times and now I've reversed the aging process. I'm Benjamin Button and I never need to go. That's not how any of these things work, right? So that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is that there are certain pressures that seem to have certain effects and other pressures that don't have that same effect, or we haven't done the research to support it yet. As an example, about 2.5 years ago, there was a study done out of Israel on telomere length and cellular senescence, right? So cellular senescence goes back to that whole sirtuin conversation that you and we were just having earlier, and trying to stimulate the cell cycle, cell death, right? Cell replication, and sirtuins play such an important role there. And ultimately, cellular senescence is associated with aging and poorly functioning, non-replicating cells. Zombie cells, they're sometimes referred to as, right? And they release a lot of inflammation to surrounding cells nearby. So this study showed, and telomeres are associated with DNA protection, okay? We could just leave it at that for now.
Yeah.
And so from an aging standpoint, less cellular senescence, the better. And the longer telomeres potentially are associated with longer life. Shorter telomeres are associated with maybe shorter life or more likely to have chronic disease or something like in this case. So this particular study showed a 20% increase in telomere length, and it showed, I think, about a 16% decrease in cellular senescence. So wow. This was a huge landmark study in the field, and it really showed the power of what hyperbaric could do from an anti-aging standpoint. Now, there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of layers in that conversation, but it certainly showed tremendous benefit from those two standpoints. Now, that study was also done at 2 atmospheres. It wasn't done at 1.3 as an example. Yeah. So nobody can say using a soft chamber, hey, I could do what they did in my soft chamber compared to this hard chamber, because that study was done at 2 atmospheres. It wasn't done at 1.3. So the answer is we don't know. Could it? Maybe. Is it possible? Sure. Is there any proof? No. Right? So we have to be careful with the way we talk about hyperbaric and how we apply the different pressures and equipment accordingly. Now, for years, we've known that hyperbaric stimulates stem cells, and most of the landmark studies on stem cells have also been done at around 2 atmospheres. And so they've shown that around 2 atmospheres over a series of treatments, we could have up to an 8 times increase in stem cells. Pretty dramatic. It's a lot. Last summer, there was a study that came out on a soft chamber, and it didn't even add oxygen. It was a soft chamber, air only. Okay.
Wow.
So that's just 30% more pressure, 21% oxygen. And they showed somewhere between a 2.5 and a 3 times increase in stem cells. Is that 8 times? No. But is that nothing? No. And are soft chambers very readily available? Yes. And so could we have a pretty big impact on, especially again, don't look at it in a 10 treatment window or a 2-month window or a 3. Look at this over a long haul. That 2.5 to 3 times increase in stem cells over a long period of time could be exceptionally meaningful.
Yeah.
I just finished a study in my clinic for part of my PhD on comparing 1.3 to 2.0, looking at a range of different markers. And, one of the most important factors that we found was that both of them decreased inflammation. Both of them decreased inflammation significantly. Higher pressure did more, but lower pressure did a lot. And so again, over the long period of time, could you maintain lower levels of inflammation, using a soft chamber? I think the answer is likely to be yes. And so we're getting to a point to understand it better, but there's still a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah, it's a beautiful explanation. And I do think as the adage goes, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And having had a lot of personal time with Efrati and the people in Israel, it is a scenario where you have the world's coolest chamber, so you're not going to bother using anything else because you can cram. I think it's between 12 to 20 people in the same chamber, and you can just crank the pressure. You're not going to bother researching something else. For many reasons, also because it has now evolved into a financial endeavor. So I think there's a lot there that would bias towards that direction. So we need to kind of understand also that bias.
Right. And, I think that's a good explanation. In the field of hyperbarics, unfortunately, what needs to happen is the people leading the field need to just sit down and have some conversations about where does one begin and where does one end, and how do we communicate to the public the differences honestly and accurately? How do we do more research so we understand where those lines actually live? Rather than, as if like I invented the protocol, I know all the secrets and I can't share that with anybody. Like that's never going to drive the field forward. In order to drive it forward, we all need to have those conversations and really help people get the most out of it. There's always going to be a place where soft chambers exist and people are using them. But if they needed something stronger, somebody needs to tell them this isn't going to work for this particular, likewise, if somebody could get a lot of benefit out of that soft chamber, they don't need to come and spend tens of $20,000, $50,000 in my clinic, and they could do it at home at a much less expense, at a lower cost to them. It would be my obligation to say you could do it this way as well, right? And so there's a lot of work there, but we're getting to it. Certainly.
So within the discussion about continuous use, that's actually something that I struggled getting an answer that would satiate me as far as integrating hyperbarics as a form of wellness practice for life. So how do you view, and I loved what you said, that if it is a wellness practice, you need to understand how it falls into a prolonged, I would say, treatment, rather than looking at it as a 10, 20 treatment window. So how do you view, are there protocols of like integrating it long term into someone's lives?
We do a lot of that. I got into hyperbaric because of an injury that I had. I used it to get out of that injury, and then I stopped using it because I was better, right? Like that's kind of what people do. But then I kept revisiting it, and so in 17 years, almost 18 years, I've done thousands and thousands of hours, My use goes up and down based on my need, just like my food plan changes over time. My exercise program changes over time. My supplement program changes over time. My skincare program changes over time, right? Like as I'm exposed or do you need different components or at different levels, different intensities, I have to modify my program to meet those changing needs. And so we don't live in a static world. We're constantly needing to adapt to the world that we live in, and we constantly should be looking at our lifestyles through that lens to understand where different components need to ebb and flow. We can't do, that's the other thing people love to do is like, I started doing this, it was good for me, so I did a lot of it. Then I started doing this, it was good for me, so I do a lot. And now I do so many things all the time that like, I don't even have time to eat or sleep or work. Like my whole day is my protocol, right? We can't live like that either,
Yeah. Or you can open a
world,
exactly. Sure. Or you can open your own center. That's what half of the people are doing. They
or you just do it in your house. Everything, you have all the things in you, and then you just never leave your home.
Yeah,
you're constantly going through the cycle. So there has to be a happy place, I think, for all these things. But because hyperbaric comes out of the medical world, there's a tendency to look at it like a treatment of disease. And looking at it from a treatment of disease, well, you have a disease, you treat the thing gets better, you stop doing, you're done. Right?
Yeah.
And there are absolute applications to use hyperbaric in that case. Even TBI, which is not even an on-label condition, we see a lot of people with, traumatic brain injuries, concussions. You could just treat the thing, right, until their brain heals, and you could be finished, and you would keep those benefits. But I don't look at hyperbaric as a treatment of, I don't even look at it as a treatment of anything, actually. I look at it as delivering a nutrient required for healing and regeneration. And so my understanding is I should get like any other vitamin, I should take some amount on a regular basis to make sure that I'm getting enough, that my body has, enough vitamin C to do the things that vitamin C does. I get enough vitamin D to make sure I have so I need enough oxygen that my cells can get as much oxygen as it needs. And then even beyond that, there's times like I could get the same amount of vitamin C every day, right? And then I think I'm getting a sufficient amount, but I think I'm getting sick.
Yeah.
Now I take a little bit more. I take a mega dose. Even though I took it regularly, now I'm taking more because I want to improve my immune function, as one example.
Yeah.
So, there's some amount of oxygen we're all getting every day just by breathing, and we have to replenish that literally every minute of every day just to have this conversation.
I love it. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And then there's a periods in your life, in your day where you're like, I need extra, right? I want to boost my immune system. I want to boost my recovery. I'm training for an event. I just had a very stressful week. I've been traveling a lot. I just got injured. There's all these things that happen in our life where we're like, okay, I need a little bit more oxygen for some, right? And we can create as my life requires more and less, I just use it more or less and create a program around it. And, I try to get most people to understand it in that way so that it becomes part of a long-term plan.
100%. It's very interesting because it's kind of what we're trying to convey when we're talking about, by the way, either skin health or general health and wellness, which is you have these three, again, in a Venn diagram, you kind of have three different categories. One is optimal performance. If you need something right now, you want to perform at your best. You have resilience and you have longevity. And a lot of the times you got to kind of pick which one you're focused on. But it seems to me like you're kind of describing the same thing. Do I have an event that I want to perform at the best way possible? And I need to redline my body in order to show up to this event in a certain way. Am I going through something and I want to boost my resilience? Or am I just working on my quote unquote longevity and making sure I age well?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I 100%. I love that. And I think that's, when we talk about human health, this makes sense. And I often do like these plant analogy, talks, especially when I'm talking with like groups of people to understand health, because we understand that like plants have a certain requirement.
Yeah.
And if they were getting all the sunlight they needed, but they weren't getting any water, they won't do well. If they got all the water they needed and they didn't get sunlight, they wouldn't do well, right? Like if they're not getting all of the right pieces in the right ratios, they can't express health. But for some reason, we like to try to do it one at a time. We're like, no, I'll just do the sunlight. No, I'll just do the water. Like, and in human health, just like in the plant, it will never work. But, if that, the ingredients for a plant to be healthy are all going to be the same for that plant, right? And they need those ingredients. Now, if there's a drought for a period of time, the plant can adapt. Or if there's flooding for a period of time, the plant can adapt. If it's going to be really sunny for a period, right? There's adaptation within that. So there's like optimum health, there's adaptation, and like you're saying, there's longevity. If we don't view ourselves through that same lens, we're never going to, this whole thing just seems to be a big mystery, which I don't think it's a mystery. I think there's requirements for humans to be healthy. And based on the challenges that you and I and everybody else on the planet face at different times in different ways, we're just trying to use the same ingredients just in different amounts or different frequencies or different durations to match. And sometimes we get into a place where it's like, hey, we're pretty good. We can just hang out for a little while and coast, but we don't coast and do nothing. We coast and then we do our longevity program, right? Because now we're just like, now this is a recovery moment, right? Not sometimes when we coast, we start to do nothing and then our health really deteriorates, right? We can't let that happen either. But I love that example that you gave. That's a great way to explain it.
Yeah, and by the way, just like a side note, like a curiosity, is it that soft shells are? This is a regulatory limitation, right? The 1.3. It's not
correct.
It's not like someone will now make it their project to like look online for a soft shell that could go over 1.3. Like that's something that the FDA kind of limits as far as like soft shells, right?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, there will be a limitation because the soft chamber will never be a hard chamber.
Yeah.
So, that there are some pressure limitations in that conversation, but in general, it's the FDA that's saying, chambers shouldn't go above 1.3. There are some chambers to go to, let's say 1.5. There's not much that go more than that in a soft chamber, but it's a regulatory issue more than it is completely a design issue. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Good. Okay. So, again, one of the things that I love the most, kind of tapping into your experience is your experience with working, for example, where we met at the Wellness Center in Brickell, Leila Setner Center, where you see a lot of modalities, and sometimes it is, as the adult in the room, you kind of need to say, okay, here is how we can amass these million things together, because it could get a little wild. So what are some of the things that you saw that can kind of work together with hyperbarics? I know you spoke before about hydrogen water, or molecular hydrogen for that matter.
Yeah. I think that first of all, the first point is a good point. We should just spend a minute on, which is, there's a million is obviously exaggerating, but there's a million things we could all be doing.
Yeah.
The question is, which ones should you be doing? Which ones should I be doing? And should both of us be doing the same or different? And should both of us be doing all of the things? Or is there ultimately a way to create and say, here's, I'll use supplements as an example. There's 30 or 40 supplements that I could take every day, but that doesn't make sense to me, right? It makes sense to me that like I create 2 to 4 month protocols using supplements to achieve certain goals, right? I have a health goal. Here's going to get me there. Once I get there, here's my next goal. And then, just like I do in my life, I make a goal, I make a plan. I think everything has to be viewed through that. So Leila's place is amazing. I love it there. I spend a lot of time there. I help with, do consulting and protocol development and stuff. And, you saw it. There's, it's 15,000 square feet. Every toy that I ever wanted is in this building.
Yeah.
It's a pretty amazing place. But you wouldn't go there to do everything every day. And so what we try to do is we try to take, in my opinion, we can do an intake, right? Here's the concerns that you have health-wise. Here are the goals that you have health-wise. And then we could do some measurements, whether that's blood work or heart rate variability or, there's a lot of different testing we can do in that scenario. I'll just leave it at those two for now. So you told me that these are your concerns. You told me that these are your goals. We tested something and found out that your body is saying X, Y, or Z about the health of your nervous system or whatever the case is. And now that we have a better picture of what you're in need of / what you're wanting, for the next 2 to 3 months, here's a routine that you can follow that's going to help guide you in that direction. In a couple months, we should remeasure those things. You should tell me, this is what's changed. This is what hasn't changed. This is what's gotten better. This is what hasn't gotten better. By the way, this also happened in my life in the last 2 weeks. That wasn't one of my concerns, when we first met. We then remeasure the things that we tested, and we can now create a new protocol, right? That way, you're not ever feeling like you have to do everything every day. It's like impossible to do that. And you're constantly renewing the program that you would need to, just like you would do with exercise, constantly varying your exercise to make sure you're getting the most out of it, So from the standpoint of like all the toys and all the tools, I really think, having someone guide that journey for you is really the best way to kind of get the most out of it.
I agree. And I also like the timeline that you gave it, which was like 2 to 4 months, which you said, constantly. To me, knowing some of the people in the, again, that are interested in like skin health, but also health in general, they normally see a new shiny object every 2 weeks. And they're like, oh, but what about this, So yeah. I like the idea of also saying, no, we're only going to reevaluate after, 2 to 4 months. Until then, we need to make sure we're consistent with our decisions. So the flip side of that is actually consistency, not only constantly varying.
Right.
Okay. So what are some of the tools that?
Right. So then we can talk about other things. So like you mentioned. So some people the benefit of hyperbaric with regard to oxidation, there's some oxidative stress that comes from hyperbaric, which has a tendency to scare people. But it's not not only is it not dangerous, it's actually the signal for most healing and regeneration to occur. But sometimes if somebody is let's say more delicate or sensitive to oxidative stress, we could use certain antioxidants. And so in those cases, sometimes we'll pair glutathione with hyperbaric, or we'll pair selenium and vitamin C with low dose vitamin C with hyperbaric. We'll pair hydrogen water, because those are, sort of on an antioxidant or redox spectrum that helps to mute some of the oxidation that hyperbaric is going to create. In other cases, you want the oxidative stress because that's the signal for the healing. And so you would choose not to use those antioxidants because you want to stimulate a healing response. Back to the whole sirtuin conversation. Yeah. Sirtuins are really stimulated through cellular adversity. And so we want to create a little cellular adversity because that's the trigger for healing. And so that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is I'm trying to maximize mitochondrial function. And so that's where like the red, blue, and O2 protocol, right? The methylene blue, the red light therapy, the oxygen. You could also add NAD to that. You could also add CoQ10 to that. Those are pieces of that electron transport chain that really drive energy production. Yeah. You could use, natural anti-inflammatories, curcumin, resveratrol. Hyperbaric has this anti-inflammatory component. So sometimes I pair that with other natural anti-inflammatories to get a more robust, response from an inflammatory standpoint. Sometimes we combine it from an infection standpoint. So someone's dealing with Lyme or mold or H. pylori or C. diff. And so we'll use hyperbaric because it has a very strong antimicrobial component. We pair that with light because light can also. We'll pair that with methylene blue, to your point. Methylene blue is very antimicrobial. But we could also pair that with other herbs or certain IVs that are going to also drive immune function up or help kill infections and things. So to me, hyperbaric, again, isn't a treatment for anything. It's just a delivery source. It's a delivery mechanism for oxygen. Oxygen is what the body is going to use to really do whatever the body, to your point earlier about the Midas touch, like I've treated thousands of patients over my almost 20 years of practice. I've never fixed or cured anybody. Bodies heal themselves. I'm just the guy trying to figure out what's stopping the process from happening. Right. And so once we can understand that person's body and what those ingredients are, we offer the body or sometimes they have too much of something they have to get rid of, right? Where like detox or those. So I combine hyperbaric with all of those things, but not for everybody every time. I combine it based on what their issues are, what their strongest needs are. And then hyperoxygen is just one foundational ingredient for all those things to work better. And then we just try to combine them with the best of the synergy type molecules or modalities to really drive that reaction in a stronger direction.
Yeah, beautiful. We see it a lot with, and again, in skincare, something that didn't catch on. It never was a part of the conversation because it's that's not fostering brand loyalty, which is probably the most important in the supplement/skincare industry. Is the idea of push and pull protocols, which is kind of basically what you've been mentioning in almost every modality, which is sometimes I want to push the skin to do more, and sometimes I want to let it time to recover and kind of lower the stress that it goes through. And it seems to me this can go very well, for example, with hyperbarics. Just a small example, we're saying, vitamin A's for the skin that increase cellular turnover, they increase the regeneration of the skin. We want to do them, at least, a quarter of the year, if not a third of the year. We really want to, push the amount that we apply on the skin to the extent that we even apply it like every day or twice a day, where it is very challenging for the skin to keep up, very challenging for it to keep up also in a way that maintains integrity, building collagen correctly, etc. It seems to me like within those times, that's going to be when we're going to be pushing, a protocol that's more heavy on regeneration with hyperbarics or red light therapy and things like that. And then you can kind of back off from everything together in other times.
Yeah, no, exactly. I love that. And that's, I think the more, and you and I started before we started recording, we were just talking about like the more people like you and I and the other people in our fields understand what one another are doing. Yeah. And are putting our, check our egos at the door and not worry about competition, but look for ways and abilities for us to collaborate. Ultimately, just to help the clients and or patients achieve the results that they're trying to get at a higher level. It's always win-win for everybody. And so, the more we can understand one another, the more we can say, okay, here's what my stuff does. Here's what my stuff does. Okay, when should they purposefully come together? And are there times where they should purposefully be on the opposite end of a spectrum? And how do we communicate that with the end users so that they know when to combine them and when not to combine them? That doesn't, just because you're not using hyperbaric for this quarter of the year or this half of year, that doesn't hurt me in any way. And if it makes the result that you're trying to get better, well, then you're going to use it when you should be using it, in the way that you should be using it, at the intensity, and you're not going to use it at other times. And that's great because you're ultimately going to get the result that you want. And that's what any of us should really be caring about.
Yeah, I agree 1,000,000%. To the extent, look, and this is, I think we in our industry, we sometimes, it's especially I would say since COVID, we really feel like everyone is interested in health optimization, you know?
Yeah.
But we need to remember that the proof that it didn't hit or that it's only now creeping into prime time is that the big pharma, big business, big health didn't, jump all over it. But we do see it in some cases. We always see it in weight loss. That's why a lowly peptide family called GLP-1 agonists exploded, and now it's its complete own industry, which is semaglutide, Wegovy, etc. But we start to see it in the health optimization community. Nestle buying, MitoPure, or L'Oreal giving them, tens of millions of dollars. I think it's important for us as a community to make sure that we live within integrity, that we're saying, yeah, the big guns are going to come. That's true because we create good results. But we have to keep integrity. The more money, the more eyes that are on this business, it's more tempting to let go of some of your integrity for, a paycheck or whatever that is. As long as we remember that we are the core tenets that need to be maintained and collaborate, I believe the future of this, of the patient or the customer, and the future of the industry is really in our collaborative hands. Or lack of collaboration will also doom this industry to be another, I hate throwing keto under the bus, but another keto diet where now you go in Costco and every cookie says keto friendly,
Right.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Yep.
So talking about the future, maybe we will kind of end in that. How does the future of biohacking looks like? I know there were a few players that were trying to marry red light therapy and hyperbarics, to try to put LEDs in the chambers. I know there is research looking at specifically about combining therapies like exosomes or peptides and hyperbarics. What are you excited about, or where would you like to see the industry going?
I think, again, just to compare it to, let's say, exercise as an example, my grandparents didn't exercise. Like they didn't, right? They were like, that wasn't on their radar, right? That wasn't even a conversation, but they probably naturally, they moved in their life far more than we would need to move in our life, let's say, without going and trying to go to the gym. So we saw like a change in our environment that led to, let's say, a decrease in the amount of movement that we had. And then we saw people starting to say, hey, you need to move your bodies. And it started with, a few crazies that were like, you need to, I don't want to name names, but there were a few like 80s, like a few people that were like, really helping drive the exercise industry. And they made a huge impact. And it came down to the idea that like, hey, this isn't like a fad. This is, you actually, exercise is literally providing your brain and your body certain nutrients that are required for cells to be happy and healthy, to the point now where my kids, they know that exercise is just part of their life. Right? Mm-hmm. And so we transitioned from like, let's just say a few industry crazies into more people aware, into some degree of like acceptance, into like, it's not even debated. There's no debate. There's no argument. Like you're either doing it or you're not. And if you're not, you should expect your health to decline over years.
Yeah.
And it's not the solution to all the things in the world, but certainly it's a big piece of it. So, I would view sort of this whole lifestyle hacking, whatever we want to call this, longevity type of industry in that same field. We've had a handful of crazies jumping up and down, like this is what we have to do. And we go to like different extremes, right? The pendulum keeps swinging in different directions. I think we're getting to a point where those pendulums are less unpredictable and they're less extreme. And we're getting into a point where, you know, the idea that there's another level outside of you should eat some healthy food and you should move your body, there's probably another level of, in order to avoid certain diseases or in order to optimize your health for as long as possible, mixed with a desire, right? Most of us, my grandparents weren't thinking like, I want to be able to exercise as long as I can, or rock climb or skydive or skateboard, you know, all whatever. You know, I'm skateboarding with my kids and more now than I did when I was 15, right? And I'm like, wow. I don't want to lose that. I want to be able to do whatever I want. Yeah. So there's this desire in our world of more people kind of refusing to like let go of the things that they want to be able to do in their life. So that drive mixed with a new layer of modalities, therapies, testing, treatments, products, you know, there's got to be this new layer of like, I eat well, I exercise, and I have some type of program or protocol, hopefully that's thoughtful and designed by somebody who understands these things. And I matched, like I was saying earlier, and that becomes to the level that exercise has become of like, it's non-negotiable, it's not debatable. If you want to live a happy, healthy life on planet Earth the way it currently is, these are some things that really need to be a part of that. And I could see it ebbing and flowing, but not like those big wings that I'm hoping that we're coming out of.
Yeah, that I see it with biohacking, like where I'm going to speak to a friend who's like industry leader in some specific area. And, you know, 10 years ago, they loved the word biohacking. And now you're going to talk to them. It's like, I don't like the word biohacking. It's like, it means that more people around you like the word biohacking. So you now are looking for the next thing. Great. Right. It's like,
what's the next great?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is fine. Like we always need, right? We need that. We need the people who are out and just pushing the limits, the people that are trying to make sense out of what's happening to the people pushing the limits. And then there's got to be a way to like organize it to help more the masses, right? The masses will never be the extremes, and shouldn't be that way, right? So, you know, anyway, I'm excited to see the next layer of what becomes. Yeah. You know,
and by the way, admittedly, us as a company, we admit we're saying we're extreme, like as a skincare company, we're saying saying this is for, you know, extreme early adopters, if you would, people who really want like cutting edge things and need to spend more time deciphering what this goo is supposed to do and when it's supposed to go on your face. And and that's why we support other companies who are, you know, who are you know, speaking to more people, and maybe we could again give a better service to them, kind of knowing what they need to concentrate in the future. Jason, listen, you are a man after my own heart. You're great at explaining everything, and I couldn't recommend your YouTube channel enough. I think you're doing a fantastic job there. Where could people kind of consume more information, and B, if they wanted to work with you, if they wanted to either as a practitioner or as an individual, how could they do that?
Yeah, so I mean, as far as Hyperbaric goes, I mean, I probably have 400 some odd videos on YouTube. I put them out every week, and I'm just trying to get more people to understand. I'm trying to simplify what Hyperbaric is, because I think that's one of the reasons it's so underutilized, is because it seems to be so daunting and confusing, and it's actually very simple and easy. Yeah. And so I'm trying to make people understand, or help people understand how easy and simple it actually is. So that's really what that channel's about. And there's tons of videos on all kinds of topics. And so, you know, we keep trying to drive that. For people that actually want to use Hyperbaric, let's say in a clinical setting, like they want to open up a clinic, you know, we offer certification courses, we offer training, we offer business support. So we have a lot of programs for people using Hyperbaric from a clinical standpoint, like I'm going to put other people in the chamber. But we also help people get equipment and, you know, use it personally or professionally. So we have, you know, many mechanisms as far as that part goes. And we could be contacted through our main website is HBOT USA. So hbotusa.com, and you can contact us, shoot an email, you know, through our staff, and, you know, we can steer you in different directions depending on what you're trying to learn from a hyperbaric standpoint. Yeah. I still consult for a lot of businesses, and I still take on a few patients here and there. I love patient care. We travel a lot. I teach a lot. So I'm just very particular. So I might take on another patient or two, like once a month. But, always happy to do that. And if somebody, really needs that kind of support, we can certainly make that happen. And those folks could contact us through the HBOT website as well. And we would just steer you in a direction if that was something that somebody was looking for.
Is there, maybe lastly, we spoke personally as Anastasia's parents, they live in Lithuania, they might need HBOT. You're like, there's a guy in Lithuania that I trained. Is there a some way to, some kind of directory, if people kind of wanted to go to a person that was trained by you guys, is there a way for them to find out about those people?
We do. So we, on our, on hbotusa.com, there's a locations page. And on that locations page, those aren't the people that I've trained. Those are the people I've trained and that I'm actively working with, from a consulting standpoint, so that we're all on the same page. The problem is that we do have a bunch of internet. We've done a bunch in Europe, Australia, even some South America and Mexico. We're having trouble from a website standpoint, just getting a world map.
Yeah.
I don't know what the deal is, but so if somebody's looking for somebody and they're not on our current map, they could also email us, because it's a very small world and we know most of the folks in it. And so even if it's not somebody I trained, but it's somebody I trust, or I'm always happy to steer somebody toward a direction and that, at least this is a company that we can trust, or that we know, or that we trained, or, so we have a larger directory than our one online, but you could always check that one out too.
Incredible. All right, great. Jason, again, thank you so much for the extensive time you gave us today.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
Cannot recommend your content enough. And you're also very gracious in person. So I hope we'll cross paths soon.
I'm sure we will.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.